There's something that happens when there's no choice left but to confront yourself. When you're made to face your fears, such as, for instance, when taking what's called a heroic dose of a particular plant medicine that has psychotropic qualities to it, you are not going to be able to backtrack yourself out of that. You've taken away the choice. You've put yourself there. You've made the choice to go in, but once you've made that choice, there's no backtracking back out of it. In a similar way, when my OBEs started, they happened in a way like that. They didn't happen by my personal control. I had been working in spiritual self-development for decades and simply reached a point where my inner being reached through and began the process of a paradigm shift for me. And in that was the experience of the Kundalini and the out of body experience, day and night, day and night, day and night, day and night for 4 years. There was no stopping it. When I realized that there was no stopping it, I realized I had to make a choice right here and there. And that was how I was going to process this experience, how I was going to receive it. And the first thing I saw was that there is only love and service within that. And so I just literally screamed out, my central nervous system in shock, to the withinness of myself, including every cell in my body. I just said, I don't know what this is. I don't know who you are. I felt a very tangible presence, very close. And I said, but this will be to my benefit. This was being directed to any potential negative influences in the experience, in the space. And so when I went into my experience with the focus that this will be to my benefit, my observations then were along that line, beneficial to me and not unbeneficial to me, yes? And so this had a tendency to clear the space for very personal, very expansive, very pleasant inner experience in the out-of-body state. However, in that, I would, of course, have experiences that shocked my central nervous system, such as the ones we call abductions, where I would find myself on the table, and experimentation. So these ignite the central nervous system. However, when I got to a certain point, I got comfortable enough with the OBE that when this would happen, when I would have an experience that would so shock me, it would like just shoot me in a second back to physical space, I would instantly, oh no, I would literally jump my energy up and free fall back down into the experience, hoping I would land in the same one, so that I could confront whatever that was, whatever that fear was right here and now. I didn't want it to stay here, get forgotten, and go to the back of my awareness where it would just, do its business sort of behind the scenes of my daily living. Oh no. Now I got to a point where I was a now or never. So my point in all of that is that when we begin to confront our fears, it has the tendency to make us unafraid of doing so.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing. Getting to a point where you're no longer so, fear is going to be there. We wear a central nervous system with a fight flight mechanism. However, we'll get to a point where we're less afraid to face our fears in the moment in which it's happening. So we don't fight or run. We face. Getting past fear. What are some of the things that you do to get past fight flight? Let's start with everyday living, and we can expand that out into the OBE or even plant medicine ceremonies.
So the first thing that I do that I would bring attention to is that I have spent and I continue to spend time alone, investigating the matrix of sensations,
Mm.
my body, my psychology. And what I mean by my psychology is what sort of thoughts and thought forms and beliefs are looping through, even observing when they're looping through. So self-investigation has been, I would say it's the my foundation. And then from there, the practices are, they can be adjustments with supplements. I've noticed that that is very good for me.
Mhm.
and then the breathing practices, the naming the feeling. I feel like that's a really important one. I don't see a lot of people. We talk about the feeling and the name of the feeling, but not what the actual feeling is in the body.
Hmm.
I create space for myself. I need space and sort of a distance from triggers of fight flight.
Yeah, so it sounds like you do a lot of preparation work in keeping your system balanced, mind, energy, and body to begin with. And this is, of
Mhm.
course, the really big thing that we can do. However, when you do go into fear, when the confrontation is there, what does the fear tend to be for you, and how would you address it?
90% of it is fight. I I'm this 90% of it. And then the other 10%, I also realized that I have an underlying chronic freeze, which I interpreted as, for the longest time, I interpreted as being productive. I'm tenacious, I'm productive. And then the more work I did, especially the bottom up work on the nervous system,
Hmm.
somatic practices, the more I realized that I was a chronic freeze. The overachievers tend to be the chronic freeze.
Okay,
What
so give me an example of how that appears in your life. Give me an example. Does it happen when you're confronting your husband or a particular friend, or does it come up when you're hearing a particular kind of information, or like,
all of the above, all of the above.
give
Hyper.
me a personal
It,
example.
it just happened this weekend. I have a schedule. I needed to get some things done, and my husband's like dragging because he's been working really hard, and he's in the middle of opening a new business, and he calls it being in the weeds. So, and I was like, let's go, let's go, let's go. That's usually, I move really fast. I'm like, once I get on something. And in the moment of doing that, my tone got more aggressive. I started to be pushy. He calls it the bulldozer. He's like, oh, here we go. It's like a bat to the head. And he stopped me. He dropped his supplements, like his pills, on the floor. And I was like, what are you doing? Let's go. Let's go. And he stopped me and he's like, Dee, I just need to take my pills and just give me a second.
Mm.
And in that moment, this is how I know my nervous system is working, as in I've like wound it down. I stopped, softened my tone intentionally, touched his arm, and I said, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Go ahead. Let me know when you're ready.
Now, what is it in that brings up the fear that causes you to behave in that way?
It's probably childhood wounding of being capable, getting things done. If you don't get things
Mhm.
done, they're going to fall apart. I have had, it's still in there. It's just a lot more, it's softened. I have a story that there is no search party coming for me.
Mm.
I'm the only one that's going to save me.
Did any of this particular fear get addressed when you did your plant medicine ceremonies?
All of this got addressed.
How did it get addressed? How did it show up?
So in different sessions,
Mm. Like,
not trusting the facilitator,
hmm.
not trusting the circle, not trusting the medicine.
And how did you get through that? Because you evidently went through with the ceremonies.
Synthesizing, sitting with it time and again, time and again. It's like opening, softening, bringing in vulnerability. Vulnerability was unsafe, period.
Hmm.
Small incremental ways of allowing so that I can change my view about it through direct experience.
Okay, I can relate to that in the sense that when it happens with me, there's always a question. I find a question always helps. And so the main question I would always ask is this a reason to love or is this a reason to fear? It's always my first question.
I wish I was that wise. That's a very new space.
Yeah.
A reason to love versus a reason to fear. Because I would enter with the idea that it doesn't really matter if the facilitator is going to really mess it up because I can trust myself. But it almost created a nervous system injury level of
Mm.
problem.
Mm. Tell us about that.
So all this work has been to heal the nervous system. Everything about the community that I'm in, the medicine I'm sitting with,
Mhm.
the lineage and the tradition that I'm being introduced in is the through line has been, oh, we're working on our nervous systems and our nervous system ability to interpret safety in the environment and capacity. Like, do I have capacity?
Right. And so, how did this almost end up an injury in the experience of the ceremony?
Not being able to integrate, taking not being able, taking a very long time to integrate the experience, the actual ceremony, and into my body to where, and this is where medicine can be injurious. You're meeting it with the nervous system that you have and with the cosmology that you have and the state that you have, and then you're going to meet everything in that space.
Absolutely.
I mean, the fear of death, people talk about having an ego death. It's like, do you actually grasp what that means?
Mm.
There, when I hear people speaking to it as if that is the goal of medicine,
Mm.
immediately I'm like, wow, you're going to have an experience. Like, just like, okay, let's go. It's like,
Mhm.
uh-huh.
There's something that happens when there's no choice left but to confront yourself when you're made to face your fears, such as, for instance, when taking what's called a heroic dose of a particular plant medicine that has psychotropic qualities to it. You are not going to be able to backtrack yourself out of that. You've taken away the choice. You've put yourself there. You've made the choice to go in, but once you've made that choice, there's no backtracking back out of it. In a similar way, when my OBEs started, they happened in a way like that. They didn't happen by my personal control. I had been working in spiritual self development for decades and simply reached a point where my inner being reached through and began the process of a paradigm shift for me. And in that was the experience of the Kundalini and the out of body experience, day and night, day and night, day and night, day and night for 4 years. There was no stopping it. When I realized that there was no stopping it, I realized I had to make a choice right here and there. And that was how I was going to process this experience, how I was going to receive it. And the first thing I saw was that there is only love and service within that, right? And so I just literally screamed out, my central nervous system in shock, to the withinness of myself, including every cell in my body. I just said, I don't know what this is. I don't know who you are. I felt a very tangible presence, very close. And I said, but this will be to my benefit. This was being directed to any potential negative influences in the experience, in the space. So I set the tone. Although I didn't know what this was, I was completely without ground. This will be to my benefit. And so that was my focus. And so when I went into my experience with the focus that this will be to my benefit, my observations then were along that line, beneficial to me and not unbeneficial to me, yes? And so this had a tendency to clear the space for very personal, very expansive, very pleasant inner experience in the out of body state. Uh, so, however, in that, I would, of course, have experiences that shocked my central nervous system, such as the ones we call abductions, where I would find myself on the table. And experimentation. So these ignite the central nervous system. However, when I got to a certain point, I got comfortable enough with the OBE that when this would happen, when I would have an experience that would so shock me, it would like just shoot me in a second back to physical space. I would instantly, oh no, I would literally jump my energy up and free fall back down into the experience, hoping I would land in the same one. so that I could confront whatever that was, whatever that fear was right here and now. I didn't want it to stay here, get forgotten, and go to the back of my awareness where it would just, do its business sort of behind the scenes of my daily living. Oh no. Now, I got to a point where I was a now or never. So my point in all of that is that when we begin to confront our fears, it has the tendency to make us unafraid of doing so.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was getting chills
Yeah.
remembering. And that's a powerful thing. Getting to a point where you're no longer fear is going to be there. We wear a central nervous system with a fight flight mechanism. However, we'll get to a point where we're less afraid to face our fears in the moment in which it's happening. So we don't fight or run. We face.
Oh, I fight. Um, Ever since I've heard you say that in the
Mm,
uh first video that I watched with you with Biba, I have decided to take that on. That this will be to my benefit
mm.
because so much of what I'm experiencing in the work is boundaries and agency.
Okay.
And so because I needed space and separation up until that point when I've heard you say that and I can take this on, I didn't even realize that I can use boundaries. So I've heard this said that if we have wishy-washy boundaries in the 3D, we're going to have wishy-washy boundaries in all the other states or all the other dimensions. And
Mm,
that made sense immediately. I'm like, oh, of course, whatever it is, it's going to have an expression in all the other different layers, right? The fractal expressions. So it has to come in somewhere where I'm conscious of it. The best way for me to be conscious of it is right here in the 3D personality. So clearing up this idea of like having boundaries and having agency and self-autonomy and being able to say, that was a process for me. And it's a process in the OBEs and I cannot say that I've had abductions, although I suspect that I have. Um, I've had etheric surgery, I believe is what it's called. Does that where the actual nervous system, my physical self, was being rewired
mhm.
while I was fully conscious.
I have had a tendency since childhood to go into a place that I simply, from the age of a child, called the healing place. I did have some awareness that healing was happening there, and I have a miraculous healing that I had at age 12, 13, 14. My father had let us go out to Lake Mead, I'm from Las Vegas, for the first time. So I go out there at 6 a.m. with my friends and stay all day, and I come back with a first degree lobster burn head to toe,
Mm.
compounded with a second degree burn where I'm blistering through most of my upper body. And long story short, I knew I had to be by myself. I knew I had to go in. I wasn't consciously aware that I was going to take myself to the healing place, but I knew I had to go in. And so I went within myself. And when I woke up the next morning, it was gone. Everything,
My,
everything.
yeah.
No blistering, no scarring. I mean, because that degree of blistering would have caused scarring in the end, some degree of it anyway, some thickening of the skin. Nothing, just a super dark tan head to toe. So that was the first time it ever came through so fully into the physical, one of my experiences going into the healing place. However, the abductions, the ET abductions where you're going onto the table, this is very physical. You are physically there. You are physically on a table in a craft with what we would call extraterrestrial beings. And so it's very different. I would often have this large apparatus shoved up my nose, and I would always be trying to pull it out, and surgeries into the back of the brain while I was wide awake. Yeah. So the actual details of what was happening in reality, who knows, the actual
Yeah.
details of what's happening in reality here, who knows, we have a limited awareness here, we have limited sense capabilities. However, in the sense that I experienced myself here, I experienced myself there, and I was highly alert to it. There was communication between the beings and myself. If it felt like it was too much, they would shift my attention, and a new landscape might appear, or just new sensations. I might still appear on the craft on the table having surgery to the back of my brain. However, it felt like I was at the hairdresser's, with my head back being washed, something like this.
So
So
interesting.
they had a way to, maneuver the situation to adapt to my own coping mechanisms. That's very different from the healing place.
Yes, it is very so. Two things I'd like to bring in here that have to do with the nervous system,
Mm,
but I have not had an experience where I cognizantly, right, cognize being on the table. I
mm,
have experience of what I believe to be craft, but not on the table. I've had the experience of the etheric surgery on me
mm,
in my bedroom, in that state where the beings were in my bedroom and working on me. And even when, and they were happening all the time. The experience that I'd like to share is that I have a trapezoid, like upper body, back body injury from when I was about 20 or so years old
mm,
that has gotten progressively worse, almost like daily chronic pain in the body, neck, shoulder. And I was experiencing a recurring dream, which I now know is an OBE, like circle
mm,
back. It's like a time frame. Like I was constantly portaling into this event from another life, me dying in a very horrid way
mm,
on battlefield. I was cut by someone coming up upon me with a sword that entered up here and cut me in three pieces. Like it went this way and it went this way. And so I was experiencing that event fully physically with all
mm,
the pain in the and complete with the feeling of the blood rushing over the limbs, like pretty gory, falling down, not having anyone with me, having the understanding that I'm going to die. Like there's no way that I will be like surviving this. Like there's no, you can't put a human back together that way. I may lose a limb, but this is no.
And there
And
you are right there in that moment, confronted with what we would call the fear of death, right?
yeah,
No getting out of it. You fully realize this is
yeah.
now, how do you confront it? Is this a reason to love or is this a reason to fear? If you can go into that, this is a reason to love, you will experience your death in that fashion. And so
Mhm.
the focus you hold, the patterns you make within the withinness of your own awareness is what is and how you experience the event. So the event may look completely horrific to somebody. However, you can pattern your awareness and focus your attention in a way that's very beneficial to you. And in doing that, you're able to make far more useful observation that can help not only yourself, but others.
But I didn't have I have complete healing of this injury. So I dealt with it for over 20 years, right? This injury and its ramifications of back pain, shoulder pain, constant, hitting my nervous system. It would actually bring my nervous system in the 3D and stress because once that came in, there was no way. I needed to unwind. I needed to lay down on the floor. I couldn't do so many things. And then I was so aware of like, oh, this is an injury. It's a physical injury that I'm expressing in the 3D that comes from this lifetime, yet never, not once in the OBE state, in the dream state, did I feel, would I ever wake up coming to terms with it until I had a rolfing session
Mm,
by a friend of mine, and when we were working on that specific area and all the fascia and all the tissues and what goes with it,
mhm,
this is what's really interesting in it. I suddenly, the physical sensation of, pain, although I'm experiencing it as pain. It's just the physical sensation of that touching on that area brought in her studio on the table
Mm-hmm.
the full expression in that moment of reliving the dream. And she moved it through the whole time. And here's another layer of the dream. In that dream, suddenly, I was not alone on the battlefield. There was a person there with me
The observations that can be made when you reach a certain point, yes.
that held me
Mm.
and just transitioned me.
Yeah.
The witness, like, yes, you are dying, and I'm here, like looking into the eyes of another being.
Oh.
My friend sat down after that on her chair next to the table and said, "Oh my God, girl,
Mm.
what you went through. Wow." And I said, "What did you see?" We experienced that right here in the 3D. And I have not had one issue with my back with any of that since.
Isn't that amazing? So
That was the healing.
was that a fear that you carried? Did you carry it in your body here because there was a fear involved? And was that the fear of death or was it something more?
Fear of death, the not feeling seen, held. It's the whole story of
You're
there's no
by
search
yourself.
party coming for me. It's like, but
Okay.
there was.
Yes.
It didn't change the event, but there
Mhm.
was.
Yeah.
Right. So like it changes my psychology to see that there was. I could give up that story that there's no search party coming for me. Not to mention that in the service bit that I am search party. Since then, probably within 6 months of that, I was sitting in ceremony with the ayahuasca and I had the experience of dying, like an actual ego death with full body death, feeling the cold of deep space and like not being able to breathe. And it's like it's so cold that my muscles completely seize that I will die again. I will die. I'm dying. There's nothing to be done. Here I am. Let it be. I knew the last breath I would take because my muscles were frozen, right? So that there was no expansion to be had. I just let it go. And I was so cold, like the feeling of so cold that I was dying from cold. I was so cold. I was observing my body just like stop shivering from because it couldn't breathe. And I was like, okay. And I let it go. And in that moment when I died, first of all, I died and I was still there. And I was like, whoa, but the transition. But in that moment, the facilitator, she was putting a blanket over me. None of this was communicated.
Mhm.
She put a blanket. It's like, the observation that, oh, you're so cold. And in that, this is the moment to love because like, that's a heart opener. That's what kickstarted me into like breathing again, right? I was like, oh, and I'm here. These are thresholds that we move past to arrive to what's on the other side.
This is so interesting. My experiences of dying have always been quite pleasant, so that's not a fear that I hold in the same way that others hold it. However, in listening to you speak there, I could see what my fear was, and I know this. I don't let myself cognize it sufficiently enough yet, but my fear is of the body.
Exactly. It's built into the system. Can we talk about that? It's like, hey, the
Yeah,
fear of death, it's actually built into the cellular consciousness.
but not the
It
fear of
wants to
death,
live.
the fear of the body. Like,
Oh,
like
I see
I
what
literally
okay, yes.
fear the
I
body.
have a body. Yes. Like I have to protect this. That too, right? It's so like, ah,
Mm,
right? It's like, no.
hmm I think that's perhaps something that's involved in the reason that I have been allowed to have the rememory of the abduction experiences on the table. Highly involves the body uh, as a way to help me get through that, inevitably. However, in the process of that, even when hearing some abduction experiencers speak, as they're telling their stories, I go into a certain energetic, that fear through the body, and I have to eat. It makes me want to go eat. I'm a compulsive eater, so I address fear with food, and Uh, However, let me just get to the way that I address that now, as a 60 some odd year old person. Uh, when I feel that sensation coming up in me now, and sometimes it'll just happen without any cause. I'm just going about my day and I all of a sudden begin to feel that and I, want to immediately go for food. I now I when I feel that sensation coming on, I just stop and say a single word, observe.
Mm.
So the observer is not in the body. And so this amounts to a very unique experience where you're watching yourself in third person and can see much more than you can when you're standing right in yourself. Again, when you're standing right in yourself in the body, it's like being right up on the wall. When you're so close to the wall, you can't see the wall.
Mhm.
Right? When you're standing right in your own shoes, you can't see as well as you can, with some distance in third person. You can see just a larger structure, a larger picture. And so I'll just simply say that single word, observe. And then as soon as whatever it is within me understands that I am now watching, intentionally watching, it stops momentarily. It doesn't go away for good, but it goes away in that moment. And that may be good for a day or a week or even just a couple hours, but it gets me through that moment. So that's rather how I'm addressing that fear at the moment.
I have a question from, so the way that I work with it is that in observation, I wanted to find out what that is because I also have the impulse to feed. What I was observing is that the vagus nerve, right, that is at the back of the throat. And
Yeah.
I started to look at it because, I observe other people. I observe myself, but I observe other people too. When we eat unconsciously, which I was doing a lot too. This is how I ended up with the Nutella addiction. So it's it's like, what is going on in this physical expression of swallowing? Because swallowing, right, like tickles or vibrates the vagus nerve, which sends the impulses through the whole body. There's a cascade of calming.
That's a really interesting place to take this. Now, you're doing it a unique way to what I am. I'm literally using food as a pacifier, like a baby would use a pacifier to calm itself, and to redirect my attention, to hide from what it is that's trying to come up and show itself to me, right? I still have not been able to look at it. However, I am, and here we're addressing the particular type of an abduction. And yeah, I haven't been able to get myself all the way through in order to see. However, I have been able to address it to the point where I can get myself to not go for the food, not pacify myself, not try to hide, but instead flip that on its head and give the command to observe and begin to observe whatever it is I can see. Now, the furthest I can see at this point is that when I do this, again, when whatever that is that's trying to swim up into my attention realizes that I'm now consciously observing, it stops.
Mhm.
So here I'm at an impasse because that's telling me I'm probably still not ready to see exactly what this is. However, there may be a way to go even further.
So there's a lot of investigation that someone can do in there that actually would help with the fight or flight response and the getting over fear. Like, I'm not likely to be so jumpy into the fight if I'm properly resourced. What does that mean for me? Well, for me, first and foremost, is did I get restful sleep?
Do you, for the most part, get restful sleep?
For the most part, yes.
Okay.
But these um I have these things that I know that they can be put in place. Like if I eat too late before bed, like too close to bedtime, no.
Or if you missed that perfect mark, my perfect mark for falling asleep is in between 9 and 9:30 p.m. If
Yeah,
I stay awake until 10 or so working and I've missed that
yeah,
9 to 9:30 jumping off point, no, I might be up still at 2 o'clock in the morning.
yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, so long as I don't eat 3 hours before going to bed, so long as I catch that wave between 9 and 9:30 p.m., yeah, I'm good to go.
And how I wake up. This is really important. You mentioned that how you wake up. Like, I don't like to be awakened. I can set an alarm for myself. Most of the time, I know that if I go to bed at a particular time and I do the setup for it, then I will wake up when I've set the intention to wake up. Like, I just do. But
Mhm.
if I'm being awakened by someone, I turn into, my husband called me a monster.
Mhm.
He literally said, "You're a monster in the morning." You
So
are.
what does that do to your nervous system?
Oh no, I'm a pill to deal with. Like, I'm just like it. Wake up in hypervigilance, in anger, in the, because it feels as if it's an unfinished thing, and then
So
the
it puts
whole
you
day
into the sympathetic nervous system right from the
sympathetic
start.
nervous system, like 10 times more sympathetic than it needs to be. I need, yes.
So because we're talking about marriage, let's talk about some of the fears that come up in a marriage and possibly some fears that have come up in your own.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
many.
and we've already sort of addressed how it is that we get through these, but what are some of the things that you're confronted with? And does this ever come with you into your more expanded states in the OBE and lucid dreams or just in the standard dream state?
Well, set me up a little more direct, because I can tell you right now that the from a nervous system perspective, what comes up in a marriage, your own partner's projections of who you are and how you should be and what this relationship should be like.
Now,
Me
details.
meeting the projections. For example, everybody wants to be in a relationship, right, with their one person. Like, my one person that is custom made for me, and everything, when I'm with that person, everything is going to be perfect, and they're going to understand me and read my mind, and I will read theirs. And they've been waiting for me. They've been waiting for me. Well, I married the man that was waiting for me. I cannot tell you how incredibly stressful it was, both for me and for him, to realize that I wasn't quite exactly the perfection that he had projected onto me. I knew I wasn't. He was about to find out. And then now what? So, we came very close to divorce, very close. Getting in the car to drive to file for divorce.
All due to fears, but you got through it. So
That's right.
how?
And the fear, how did I work with my fear at that time? I actually accepted it. I went into the surrender. This is how it is. And I will take care of things as I see it when I get to it. Like, I have to trust myself that I have something that's going to, incremental small movements toward what I need to take care of myself in that day, because it was like my world was falling apart again. And it didn't. And when I surrendered, he pulled the car over and he said, "You know what? I don't want this." And I said, "I don't want this either." And I said, "Great." And that was the moment. This is why I like to say that I am not in the marriage that I started off in. I am in my second marriage within the same marriage, because that was the moment where we started to have a marriage that was about who I am and who he is, direct for us. And that became the story of getting to know each other. And right now, we've been married for 12 years next month. And we joke that we have a 20-minute turnaround on a conflict. There are still conflicts, but there's a 20-minute turnaround, because he knows how to resource himself and I know how to resource myself.
Mhm.
And the surrender that, like, hey, this may not work forever, but it will be a decision that we are both complete when it is. Both.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is so important to say. And this can happen not just in a marriage, but in a lifetime. How many of us have lived a second and third and fourth and fifth iteration of our life
Mhm.
rather than move on at some point in the past, meaning leave the body and move on. And then it can also happen through the OBE and expanded states. So
Have you ever had that?
absolutely.
Where
But
you've lived a
go ahead.
lifetime? We'd lived a lifetime. I've had that lived a life. I lived a lifetime in an OBE.
Now, I mean here. So,
Oh,
like you had a second iteration of your marriage here.
mhm. Yes,
You can also have a second and third and fourth and fifth iteration of your life when you hit these critical marks in which you
yes,
do just what you said. You surrender to the moment. You accept what is, and this is a very consciousness expanding thing to do. And in that expansion, we can see so much more. We can make clearer observation. We feel our real heart
yes.
more so than otherwise, and we move into a second phase of ourself where now we're utilizing this state of surrender and acceptance in a variety of different ways. Yeah.
I call that the expanding the broadband, right? Larger broadband, which in essence for me is what soul integration, soul reintegration, or soul retrieval is.
Mhm.
Because in the both the physical expansion that I'm sensing in the surrender, there is a physical component, a felt perspective in it, but there's a mind perspective, right? A consciousness perspective, like the broadening, then that brings in and it's able to integrate a greater aspect of myself right here
Yeah.
in this life.
And that's, of course, the culmination of any expanded state, out of body experience, astral projection, lucid dreaming, however you want to name it. This is the culmination when you can bring what you've been aware of in that expanded state and embody it here and physical space. So that's always going to be the culmination. Can you wear that awareness here? Can you embody it? Can you put it to action, in your doings and goings on here? Can you plant it here like a seed and watch it grow something new that's perhaps more beneficial to the system here than what we currently have? Or just, what follows it, in a progression and an advancing or graduating of the system itself. Yeah, I have a question. Do you ever get any fear tests right when you're waking?
Position it. Like,
Well, I'll give an example. So, like when you're waking and you're on that threshold between wake and sleep, and if you're very alert through the process of shifting through all of that, you'll find yourself in what I call the etheric frequency bandwidth. However, in a spectral sense, you're aware of yourself lying in the bed in your physical space. However, you're also in the etheric frequency bandwidth, aware of certain goings on there. And there was a period of time when I was going out of body in the day and night phase of it, between 2009 and 2013, 2014, where I would get these tests in the morning. um, One of them would be like, okay, so here's one. I'm lying on the mattress and my hand, I'm belly down, and my hand is on the mattress, but all of a sudden I realize my hand is not on a mattress. It's on a man's chest. I clearly began detecting that. And now, rather than horizontal, like I am in physical space, I'm aware I'm standing in front of an extremely tall, bare-chested male person, and my hand is right there on its chest, and it's like going like this, trying to figure out what it's feeling.
sorry, I'm
And it,
laughing.
he's just standing there, like observing this, incredibly neutral, but in a curiously interested fashion. And as soon as I'm like fully there, he picks me up. I realize I'm unclothed, like I always am in the OBE. And he carries me over to a conveyor belt and lays me down on it. At which point I realize that this is an entire space full of conveyor belts of naked human bodies in fetal positions. And I'm like, so like the shock in me, at that moment of seeing that is what I mean by a fear test, like when you're waking. So like if you go into fear in the expanded state, the experience collapses. So
I
if you do want to see further than what you did, you have to address the fear in that moment to where the central nervous system uh, doesn't go into a schism. Now, I couldn't in that moment. I didn't get to see any further than that. It was a fade to black and then a fade in scene, and I was somewhere else. But that's an example of another one was just, it happens so often. I was like manifesting men in my arms right there in the bed. Like it wasn't just that beings were coming into my space, into my room, they'd be right there in the bed. So there was this one morning where I'm in a deliberate practice. I'm on my back, face up, and I'm on that threshold between physical and etheric frequency bandwidth, and in both places, I could shift my attention fully one way and fully another. And right there in between. And when I shifted it fully into the etheric, there is a blonde-headed, very attractive blonde-headed man with brown eyes. And he just simply says, when he realizes I'm fully conscious there with him, he just whispers in my ear, "Are you excited?" My heart's like beating out of my chest because the proximity, of course, is so close, you know. Um, Now, however, that one, my heart was beating out of my chest, but I was also amused at the same time because I had the awareness that this situation continues to take place here. This is when I was working through not the base chakra, but the second and third chakras, you
Mm.
know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
residue there that I was still, working at cleansing to work my way through the process. But I would get these at waking, yeah. And I would consider them fear tests because of, they, of course, hit the base mechanism. And I had a choice there to go into fear. Is this a reason to love or a reason to fear? And if you choose a reason to fear, if you can't shift on to it's a reason to love, then the experience collapses. However, if you can, just shift into it's a reason to love, or simply just be more curious than fearful. You'll move through that into a deeper level of the experience. And in that one, I did. We were then on a boat on a river and we were having a conversation. And I was down there with him. I was standing up on a mountain looking down at them, and I was in my room watching the whole thing. So that's the synchronous states or the quantum locating state that I enjoyed so much in my experiences. And that's another thing. That's how I could address fear in the OBE specifically itself, was by achieving a waveform state in which I had that quantum location where I could be in multiple locations at the same time, taking in a wider spectrum of data to see a fuller picture.
Mhm.
Again, when we're standing right in front of the lion, it can be very fearful. However, if we're standing right in front of the lion and behind ourselves, watching ourselves standing in front of the lion, and even further out, watching the whole thing take place, it's a completely different experience. Yeah, not as much fear in that because what is outside of the body is present in the observing of the experience at the same time as that which is.
See, but you calling them fear tests, and that's your interpretation and how you arrived at it. I haven't arrived at that place just yet in the OBE state. And I have had those experiences, but I generally have them not at awakening. I have them as I'm falling asleep. That shift in the etheric is the most busy for me at the falling asleep, because am I falling asleep consciously or am I dozing? Right? Like that. When I start to just go unconscious, it's very busy.
I made an observation when after I had been going out near every night and day again for years, I had made an observation that the experiences that I would have at the top of the night, between where I first fell asleep, between 9 and 10 generally, and roughly 2 o'clock in the morning, those were the most frightful for me. The
Yes.
kind of experiences that would happen between 2 and 6, very pleasant, of course. And then if I got to the point where I did a deliberate wake back to bed, the very profound experiences I would have in the morning were, of course, very insightful. It's that top of the night period of time
Yeah,
between.
same. Same. I either will not sleep because I'm dozing, and within the first hour, I slam myself back into the 3D to be awake to control. Or somewhere between 11 and like 2 in the morning, same thing. And then everything else after that is the pleasant. It's almost so pleasant that that's why I don't like to be woken up. I was like, I'm just gonna stay in this as long. It's such a easy coming in.
Do you
But
have any insight into why that is? Like why those particular hours bring the more frightful kinds of experiences? Not that we have to go into fear during
I
our.
don't know that I have insight. I suspect or I intuit that there's something that has to do with the circadian cycle, as one might look at through the Chinese medicine body clock. I think there's also an overload of melatonin that comes in, again with the circadian cycle, right? That comes in right as we're falling asleep. There's more of that, right? Like after that, I look at the, I don't know if I can say the science, they're my own interpretations. So, there's more cortisol coming in as you're starting to awake, right? There's
Mhm.
like, what's the chemical aspect that one can actually pinpoint in the body? Like what is going on? How is my three-dimensional physical system affected, right? Uh, there's melatonin, there's DMT, and there's, tryptophan and all these things
But
that,
isn't that true all through the night? That's not true just at the top of the night.
they and it's so after 3 p.m. or so on a most regular circadian cycle, that's assuming that someone is in line with the, awake with
Mhm.
the sun up and then, wind down. Right around 3 p.m., 3, 4, 5 p.m. is where the um, liver channel comes online.
Yeah,
Like
this would be interesting to look into.
yeah, there's a natural detoxing processing on a particular schedule, and then how we get affected by that.
That would be interesting to look into. What exactly, what processes does the body move through as it's falling asleep,
Mhm.
relative to the top of the night, middle of the night, and
Yeah,
bottom?
especially because you know some about the parasites and the effects of parasites and the biofilm and all that. Like that's when like that's being cleared and pushed out. And so what are the effects of that, right, in the body?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting there.
So I did get myself through that, when you're going out so often through the multiple year span of time, you have one of two choices: allow the experiences to take place or take your conscious awareness away from that spectrum of the process. Now, mine was to face what was happening there. And so I would deliberately, allow those experiences to take place with the focus that this is going to be to my benefit. I don't know who you are or who's going to come or who's all associated with this whole process, but this is going to be to my benefit. And with that in mind, I would lay there and gosh, it's so interesting how it happened. I would lay there in the bed and literally feel my body being moved. I would feel what felt like physical hands
Yeah.
reach under my shoulders and pull me up in the bed and then roll me over onto my side. Now, I was experiencing in Kundalini, there's something called Kriyas,
Yep.
Kundalini Kriyas, and these are
Familiar.
involuntary movements of the body. So my body was being moved not by my control. And here I do mean my physical body was being moved in the bed. It would like somebody would reach under like right under here with both hands and pull me up in the bed and then roll me over on my side. And then it usually took moving me into three different positions, and this could happen physically or etherically or astrally. It could happen with any of the bodies, but those three maneuvers, and then I was out.
It's interesting that you should talk about Kriyas as part of the working through the fight, flight, or nervous system
Okay.
because I have experienced Kriyas and I can concur that it feels as if the body is being manipulated by an outside force.
And it
Be-
doesn't feel like it. It is. My
oh, it is.
physical
Okay.
body in the
Yeah,
bed
exactly.
had
Yes.
been moved. Yes.
Yes. Same. I actually have an experience where I had to check in with my husband if something happened or how I ended up on the floor because I went to bed. The cat was in the cat tree, da 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 da, da something, something open. I had a whole out of body experience and came to on the floor, out of bed, no pain, nothing. I got up. I had let the cat out. The cat was right back in the cat tree. It's like it put me back on the floor. And about, I don't know, a few minutes before I fell asleep. And that's a nervous system activation right there. We're like, what the
Yes.
hell is that? And my husband's like, what are you talking about? You just went to bed. I was like, no, no, I've been sleeping. Did you come in the room? Did you let the cat out? Let the cat back in. And he's like, I'm watching TV. You went to bed. It was such a weird situation that I'm like, what just happened?
And just to mention how the body copes with that itself through the process of things like this happening, is it will begin to breathe itself. Like it breathes itself differently. I may consciously calm myself down through the process of this happening because it could be lengthy. This
Yes,
process could take 4 or 5 minutes. You know, and so if I didn't get through the fear, I wouldn't be able to follow where this experience was coming from and what exactly was happening.
right.
And I very much wanted to follow it and face what it was that was happening. And it was not always positive. But I would focus on Ujjayi breathing to slow my breath rate down to bring me into the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, a deep state of pratyahara, and
Mhm.
the body would move into kumbhaka. This is when I began realizing that through many of my OBEs, I was in breath cessation or kumbhaka. I wasn't breathing. And I could be taken right into my body to witness the process of this happening, which was just phenomenal. So, like, as these beings or whoever they were moving my body in the bed, I would be like inside of my mouth cavity, watching how my mouth was restructured. The inside components of my mouth were restructuring itself for kumbhaka. Yeah, and then when I would get back from these experiences, I would always know my mouth would be just dry as a bone. And I mean, dry as a bone. If I had stayed out any longer or let that condition gone on any longer, I likely would have died. Because when the inside of the mouth is not moist, when the inside of the throat is not moist, you can't breathe. So if it would have continued to the point where I could not have, when I got back here, reinstigated the breath by remoistening the inside of my mouth and throat, then yes, I could have ended up in an untoward situation there. But that never happened. And I was never fearful that it was. I was always highly curious at what that was and why it was happening. Why did it happen during some OBEs and not during other OBEs?
I come in from that with like taking a breath as if I've been held underwater. When I come in, I'm like this, like that. Like I'm like, oh, like I've been held down.
Mm,
And it's like, was I not breathing? Like I did not realize, I didn't cognize that. I have so many questions. May I position one for you?
sure.
I would like to know what it was like for you from the perspective of the fight, flight, fear, and the nervous system activation when you started to have the Kundalini uh, um, coming through. Because I saw the video of you, like, what was it, quite a few years ago, of the Kriyas moving through your neck. You've spoken about it,
Quick whip. Yep.
because I've had that experience where I'm like, yeah, my left leg is doing something, to almost where at first it was not fun. It was like, I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And then it was a thing that was happening. And so, and I'm not saying that it was Kundalini, but definitely Kriya, right? Where I'm like, it's doing something and this is what it's doing. And I'm going to laugh at it because now I'm okay with it. And then it worked itself out, right? But
Yeah.
there's twitching, there's movement, um, I want to know first about what was that like? Like, how do you move through the three-dimensional, everyday human world,
Mm.
that level of kriyas?
Yeah, that's interesting. I always lived within myself as the reality as that I was experiencing, and although I did not cognize that the way that I cognize it now, it was still the fact. An additional element of my own particular makeup is that I never found anything odd.
Mhm.
Ever. I didn't find anything odd. Yeah, my mind just never went there. I had no comparison. When you're always living in yourself as the reality you're experiencing, there's no comparison. There's just what is, what's happening. And in that, yeah, nothing was odd. There was always
So,
what
see,
people in our world would find odd, but,
yes.
not that I did for lack of a comparison. Yeah.
But also the resistance, right, that we have to that, because I've observed one of my own very close girlfriends have those kriyas in medicine where she cannot lay down, like the body crunches.
Whoa.
And I not to laugh at her because she was laughing at herself and she's like, oh fuck, like here we go again, you know, and it was really funny. Pardon me, I probably shouldn't have said that, so like bleep it out. But like when you watch it, she's like, this is happening, this happens in deep meditation, this happens, and here I am, like this energy's moving through, and I know her and I know what kriyas are, right? And it's like, okay, just like relax and or let it be. Like don't fight it, right? But it can be painful. Like some of my kriyas were painful. They've cut my knees have been cut out from underneath me where they decided to do something and I'm like hanging on to the, you know, to the countertop of like this is, and then as soon as it stops, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna laugh at it now because it'll move, you know, it'll keep coming through.
Yeah, my physical kriyas were not extensive. There was that quick whip of the neck thing that would happen, and this is a movement that I cannot duplicate physically, consciously. It's the whip is so fast, uh, and I never did really look into that to identify what it was that was causing it. And the other one were what I just conceived because I was moving into the out of body state as my physical body being moved, not by my own control, you know, and things like that. That definitely in the beginning, especially when you feel hands on you in a room where you know that you're the only one physically there, that will send the central nervous system into shock. My
So
central
much
nervous
shock.
system was in shock for roughly 2 years. The first year was the worst, and then it slowly worked itself through the second year. But I lived in that state for that length of time at the same time that I was going out near day and night, at the same time the Kundalini was working its processes through the body, which is a whole nother thing. The only one that was not pleasant is what I could call an internal kriya, and that was internal activity that was resulting in the sensation of pain in my body that I had to stay in the physical space in a fully conscious state through at the top of every night for 2 to 3 hours prior to going out. And it literally felt like every bone in my body was being broken and reset, starting from the tip of my toes up to the crown of my head. And as it was working from the toes up toward the perineum, it was simultaneously working from the crown down toward the perineum through the spinal, or what we could say chakras system. So the physical system was addressed through the legs, toe to perineum, and the energetic system was addressed crown to perineum, or top down through the energetic system.
Interesting. I've had something like that and it went on and on. I actually just had another round of it. I feel like about a couple months ago, right around the time when we first connected. And I was interpreting it as a Kundalini, but that's exactly the feeling. The feeling was that I'm being crushed from the inside, is what I said. It's as if my bones were expanding and they were expanding against the joints and they were being like pushing out, like they were making more bone and
Mhm.
all my joints. But then in the OBE state, I would have, and this is part of the etheric surgery, where I
Mhm.
was getting work done on my spine, but like on every vertebrae and in
Mhm.
wide awake in the 3D, but seeing these lights like lasers moving and holding my head, and my spine was getting all this almost like laser light. It was blue being poured in and resetting. And I could feel the beings that were doing that. And that was not fun. That was part of me having to step into this agency of
Yeah.
like, and then what I realized, and I want to say this because I feel like it's somehow important. I had learned from in the process of trying to figure myself out and what is going on, I was introduced to energetic synthesis where I've learned, you know, things that are very, very helpful for me, but there was a lot of things that were even more fear inducing.
Mhm.
And so I had picked up a declaration, if you will, a prayer of sleep state, like sleep state protection. But the prayer was, and I don't know why I didn't realize that, the prayer was to resurrect the original angelic human blueprint and rewire and recode to original blueprint. And so I would be saying that at night, and during the night I would have the experience of being worked on. And I went to my friend and I said, I don't know what's happening. I feel like I'm being messed with. It was all about entities. It's like all, negative alien agenda. It was, and I'm not saying that that's not what it was, but this is how I was not sitting well with it. The more I say, I say my prayers and nothing is keeping it. And she is a channeler. And she's like, well, let's look into it. And immediately said, my dear, you're asking for it. They're here at your prompt. And I was like, what? And then I realized that, like, oh, I am setting myself up for a rewiring. And as soon as I had that realization,
Mm.
it stopped. I,
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
no
Well,
longer had they had the feeling of like I'm being messed with.
it didn't necessarily stop. We never know if it stopped, right? We know that we stopped being consciously aware of it,
No,
which we,
I've had it since, but then I didn't have the issue with it. It's like, oh, this is what we're doing. We're putting me together.
right.
Because I also have a connection with, I'm the one that called it in. So now there's agency in it.
You're the one that called it into your conscious state. And then
Mhm.
you also called for it to exit your conscious state. We're all given this choice, every single one of us in every single moment of every single day. But I was given it, when my OBE started in all of the whole spectrum of experience involved in that, came to the fore. And I definitely chose to continue it in my conscious state of awareness, and then I simply just followed what all of it was. It's why that whole process lasted 4 or 5 years, why I could go out near day and night for 4 or 5 years, because I agreed to it, and it took me that long to see and experience it in a more linear fashion or a more time-based fashion, the way that we experience things here. I want to say that with the Kundalini and the part of the process that was painful for me, it was too painful for me to look into, to see in any detail. I didn't have an inclination to do that. My inclination was to absorb the pain, to break into a depth of the experience that allowed me to buffer it to some degree so that I could handle it, otherwise, it would have just broken me. So I dealt with that by moving into certain asana, especially inversions.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Yes.
I just instinctually knew to headstand and to do plow and just certain inversion postures. Any inversion posture would help me, but as would opening the sits bones. So just sitting in a cross-legged position and lowering my head to the floor, you
Mhm.
know, and I would just stay
Got it.
there, for hours, while it worked itself out, knowing
Yeah.
that at the end of this process, I was going traveling, and so I always had that like dessert, dangling in front of my face while I went through that process. I knew it was opening me out into,
Mhm.
more of the expanded state, into more out of body experience, into learning more about what all of this was about to begin with. Yeah.
I get a lot of congestion and I can feel it, the congestion when it's like, oh, I need to actually put my physical body in the state of inversion. Almost, and I even bought a teeter table. And because
Oh, yeah,
I,
love those
I told my husband, I was like, I feel like I just want somebody to like hold me by my ankles, like upside down and do that. And
traction.
yeah, and then I would see my chiropractor, and it was always like the neck, the this, and like, can you pull my legs? And we would just laugh. My husband, I was like, can you do it? And he's like, I don't know what you want. I don't know. I was like, it would be just so much easier and like $50 less if you could just pull my leg the correct way. And then I just bought a teeter table, and I was like, this is gonna save money for like not just being an inversion.
Yeah.
I do my headstands, but like it would be just be nice to get, see this world from a different view. Um, I quickly, if we have time, I want to say that there was a lot that went into making the soup and the salad that I am right now. And so I went in all sorts of different ways trying to explain these things, that even learning a modality of, energy medicine, as in like energetic healing, and we were being taught, and I'm very grateful for it, but we were being taught how to do spirit counseling. And I'm in the space of like, I don't want to do any spirit counseling. Like, what I'm here to try to figure out how not to, right? Because at the time it felt like there was no agency, and why am I having these experiences? And, these people might be closer to what I'm experiencing and they can explain it. So every time in the class, we were taught how to step into the theta, directly put ourselves into the theta and shamanic state, and to open our field. All I would experience, all I would get is no. The gnomes were like, we're waiting for you in the yard. You were supposed to plant this. And I'm like, okay, I'll be there. And I didn't feel comfortable sharing that in class because I felt like the fool that is like, oh, I'm not reaching the state that I needed to reach because all I'm getting is the fairies and the gnomes and
So
the,
you're having this fear and you get through it by,
I get through it by as soon as I would about ready to fall asleep at night, all the entities of like past beings would show up. It's as if I wasn't going deep enough.
so you would allow more experience and you
I would
would
allow more
allow that
experience,
experience to deepen.
yes, to deepen it.
So
But
rather
the
than run
immediate
or rather than
reaction,
fight, I have to say this. So rather than run and rather than fight, you surrendered and allowed, and you allowed the experience of what you were facing to grow even deeper.
eventually,
Yeah.
it took a while. The first time it happened is I was dozing, falling asleep, and suddenly there was like a man and a woman and these two kids in the room, and the man was right next to the bed. I literally went like, "Oh no!" Like, and then they just kept coming, and so I was like, okay, now I can't. Now I have a rule. After 10 p.m. in my bedroom, no, because I would like my sleep.
So, on a closing note, what would you say to people who are working with fear barriers at the moment relative to going into expanded states?
I would say declare whatever the declaration that is best for you, much like yours, that this would be to my benefit and to my advantage. Find it in yourself, whatever it is that you need to say to position and make that declaration first, right? Like
So
find the thing.
focus, find
Yes,
the
focus
focus.
and bring agency to yourself, right? In the way that you would say it for yourself. And then take small sips, as small as it's being allowed with the current biology that you're working with. And then, like anything else, it's like flexing a muscle. You're going to be able to lift greater weight, right? Have greater capacity if you apply yourself. Practice makes better, and it will, much like anything in the yogic practice, it would reveal itself.
Some things are knee jerk. Sometimes we get the confrontation of what it is we fear, and fight flight gets activated. And in that moment, uh, how do you bring something as fast as what fight flight got ignited so that you can move further into the experience?
If you,
What's your technique?
my technique,
Mhm.
oh, I'm a repeat offender at punching. So that I don't know that I'm the best at, like, literally, like, you jump at me, it's in the throat, right? I think bringing myself into the body, right? Like put a hand, touch my body to bring myself into the body. And so that I can ground in that moment. And then the breathing practices have taught me to focus on inhalation, exhalation,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
I think that's the one thing that I use the most.
I use observe. I
Observe, but I
I
want, go
let me
ahead.
let me finish that sentence and just say that I use observe. So when the unpleasant feeling arises, or when the igniting of the central nervous system and the fight flight mechanism gets ignited, in that instant, observe. It's just really fast. Observe. So that one works for me as a technique because, again, the observer is not in the body, and it gives you an immediate wider view, and you can experience the view that's outside the body, and no body, no fear. That's why that technique works. Now, I understand this and experience it in this way because I've spiritually disciplined myself for multiple decades. I don't know if that technique would work for others. If anybody's listening and wants to give that a try, let me know if that works for you. But in addition to that, when I was in the middle of the 4 year span of time in which I couldn't stop the experience from happening, I was going along for the ride. Now, I had agreed to it at the top. But what worked for me was by realizing that I was more curious than fearful. So anytime you can let curiosity sit in the front seat, like get curiosity about what that fight flight mechanism is, get curious about why you just went into fear. Let the curiosity about what that is right in the front. Fear will be in the back, and you will be able to do, as you say, get a little deeper into, what that is, and hopefully through it into a new span of the experience.
The most authentic thing that I can say
Mm.
is that I actually don't know. And I have to be,
Hallelujah.
yeah, it would be so improper to say, oh yeah, this, I can think of something right now, but I don't actually know because I haven't toyed with it, worked with it, really sat with it where I can tell you that I have a process such as the one you have. And I think that I want people to know that I don't have it. And to be determined. I'm going to play around. I'm going to observe. I'm going to, right? Like I came back from the last experience that I had 2 nights ago with thank you. Like finally, I was like, thank you. Oh, and can I please tell you that you and I outside of this have talked about the flying and like how I would hit buildings and come back with like having a bruise on my body and the 3D from it. So in this experience, I was flying and I was like, oh, you got to be careful. Like I actually was able to cognize, like, got to be careful because, and like, no, there's a way where I'm not going to get hurt. And it's almost like I was observing, looking for a body of water that was deep. And I dove in it and I came back up as if I just jumped in the water and I went like that. And I went, that's why I went, thank you. I was like, I have figured out a way to not come in for hard landing, not bruise myself. And I was like, Casey, I got it. And I was like, thank you. It was amazing.
Excellent. And I want to hear all about that experience.